Welcome to the first episode of Secrets of the Avatar, where we are rewatching every episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender to break down all those visual details, moments of foreshadowing, and cool little Easter eggs you might have overlooked on your first watch. Today, we're diving into the episode that started it all, The Boy in the Iceberg.
Water.
We begin with an extended opening from Katara with some major differences to the opening we see in other episodes.
My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. A time of peace, when the Avatar kept balance between the Water Tribes, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, and Air Nomads. But that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
We obviously wouldn't know it yet, but on a rewatch, you can tell that the silhouetted Avatar is actually Avatar Roku. And note that it looks like where he's standing could be the same place where Aang will eventually take on Fire Lord Ozai in the series finale. And while in this episode the main Avatar theme plays over the episode title, in every other episode it's a specific piece of music meant to represent the tone of that episode. Sokka's first line of the series is fittingly,
"It's not getting away from me this time. Watch and learn, Katara. This is how you catch a fish."
even though Katara is the one who actually catches a fish.
Sokka, look!
Which nicely sets up Sokka's slight overconfidence, a character trait that will be addressed in later episodes.
This may be a little tough, but try to block me.
Next, we see Katara perform some pretty impressive waterbending accidentally while she's yelling at Sokka.
I'm embarrassed to be related to you!
Which is strange, since just a few seconds earlier, we saw that her skill level was incredibly basic.
Sokka, look!
I think this sort of shows us that anger can be used as a fuel for powerful bending, even though it's harder to control.
You mean I did that?
Which foreshadows a plot point in the future when Zuko learns to stop using his anger to fuel his firebending, allowing him to gain better control.
Maybe your firebending comes from rage, and you just don't have enough anger to fuel it the way you used to.
Okay, moving on. We get our first glimpse of Aang and Appa with this iconic image of the duo frozen in ice. Notice how Aang's tattoos are already glowing here, because as we find out in the episode The Storm, Aang was already in the Avatar state when he froze himself. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, since Aang had only mastered airbending up to that point. He would have to be in the Avatar state where he has the knowledge of his previous lives in order to waterbend like this. Once Aang wakes up, Katara rushes in to help free him using Sokka's battle club. According to the official art book, this club was inspired by real-life Native American war clubs. And notice how when she breaks through, she gets a blast of not water, but air. So just in case you hadn't already figured it out, you'd realize that the titular Boy in the Iceberg is also the titular Last Airbender. Aang's awakening triggers a beam of pure energy firing into the sky. If this looks familiar, it might be because it's visually similar to the spirit portal pillar that harmonic convergence amplified in the Legend of Korra. The one Wan used to permanently merge with the spirit Rava and become the very first Avatar?
We are bonded forever.
Kind of fitting that this pillar of light that represents the origin of the Avatar also represents his return to the world. Unfortunately, it also signals Zuko to his return.
Finally.
Then we see a few tiger seals, which sort of sets up the fact that all the animals in this show will be a hybrid of two real-world animals. Although that fish we saw earlier just looked like a regular fish. Whatever. Next, Aang climbs out of the iceberg, and right away we see how much detail the animators put into these characters. Because even the way Aang moves is unique to airbenders. Always light on his feet, and if you look closely, you can see that he casually uses a gust of wind to help him stand up. Then, of course, we're introduced to Appa.
Appa! Are you all right? Wake up, buddy.
And while Aang refers to him simply as Flying Bison,
This is Appa, my flying bison.
Right. And this is Katara, my flying sister.
Appa is also a hybrid animal. According to the art book, he is a bison-manatee hybrid. So they ride off on Appa, and Aang has a dream giving us some context to how he was frozen. This scene is almost exactly the same as the one we see later in the episode The Storm, where he also recounts this incident. But it has a few extra shots before showing Aang getting frozen. And Aang's scream uses a different take. When he wakes up in the village of the Southern Water Tribe, Katara notices that his arrow tattoos aren't just on his head, but his back, arms, and legs as well. That's because the arrows are tattooed to follow the Airbender's chi path, or the paths their chi energy takes as it flows through the body. Which, according to the series creators, is why Aang's tattoos glow in the Avatar state, rather than just his eyes like Avatars without the tattoos. Aang is introduced to the rest of the village, and you might notice that it's comprised of mostly children, because most of the adults had gone off to war after the Fire Nation attacked the village searching for waterbenders, which we see in later episodes. Then Aang crashes his glider into Sokka's makeshift watchtower. And if you look closely, you'll see the flag on top bears the Water Tribe insignia, a symbol we see much more prominently later in the series when the gang visits the more robust Northern Water Tribe. And it's interesting to note that as soon as the topic of Katara's waterbending abilities comes up,
You're a waterbender.
Well, sort of. Not yet.
All right, no more playing. Come on, Katara, you have chores.
Gran is pretty quick to interrupt. This could be because she wants to keep Katara's abilities as secret as possible. After all, in a much later episode, The Southern Raiders, we learn that the tribe had been raided because the Fire Nation learned about a single waterbender living in the tribe. Meanwhile, Zuko is seen getting increasingly frustrated during his training with his uncle.
Drill it again!
The sages tell us that the Avatar is the last Airbender. He must be over 100 years old by now. He's had a century to master the 4 elements. I'll need more than basic firebending to defeat him. You will teach me the advanced set!
Now he mentions the sages there, and that's not just a device for exposition. Those sages actually show up later in Book 1, and we learn that they're the people responsible for locating the Avatars born into the Fire Nation, which is why they're so knowledgeable about the Avatar in general. Oh, and Iroh is preoccupied with his roast duck,
I must finish my roast duck.
which must be a soft spot for him because it comes up again in the Book 2 episode, The Cave of Two Lovers.
Why don't you stay for dinner?
Sorry, but we need to be moving on.
That's too bad. My mom always makes too much roast duck.
Where do you live exactly?
And Aang actually gets his wish from the beginning of the episode and goes penguin sledding with Katara.
Will you go penguin sledding with me?
And while he just calls them penguins, they look like they're also hybrid animals of otters and penguins. Because again, all animals in the show are meant to be hybrids. Although Iroh did seem to be eating just regular old duck.
I must finish my roast duck.
So all animals except fish and ducks apparently. Anyway, this scene nicely sets up Aang's love for going on crazy joyrides, like when he surfs on the giant koi fish or rides the mail system in Omashu. Then, the pair come across an old Fire Navy ship, strangely frozen in these ice spikes from below. Now, if you pay attention, later in the series, the episode The Puppet Master, Hama's flashback reveals exactly how this ship got here.
A Fire Navy ship, and a very bad memory for my people.
Finally, Aang trips a booby trap and the episode ends the same way it began, with Aang accidentally signaling the Fire Nation with some sort of light in the sky. At first, it may seem strange that the Fire Nation would booby trap their own ship to fire a flare, but if you watch closely, it looks like the booby trap actually sets off this hot steam, which may have been what indirectly triggered the flare to go off. But either way, of course, Zuko sees it, and for the second time this episode, is alerted to their presence. And just when things start to heat up here,
I found the Avatar.
we get this, a cliffhanger. But don't worry, this series is packed with secrets and details like this, so let us know if you caught something we missed. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch our next episode where we break down the secrets in episode 2. But until then, Flameo, Hotman.